Soulful Menagerie by chocolatecastleinthesky on AO3. Read by Lily6645. This fic is rated for teens and up audience. Chapter 4. What makes a family? In many ways, it was enough for Hitoshi to know his big brother was doing okay and was back in the area. They still hadn't gotten in contact with him, not really, but his dad said that someone had been occasionally staying in the treehouse and that he had found a letter for Hitoshi from Dabi. It was just the one letter, even though he'd had his dad leave another, and weeks had passed at this point. Hitoshi kept the letter in his drawer of his bedside table for days. He needed a reminder that things would be okay. Hitoshi, I am sorry for disappearing on you. I didn't want to. A lot of things happened before I could come back. I am glad you found your soul parents. I'm going to do better so that when I see you again, you can be proud of me. You keep on being your amazing self, and I know that you'll be an amazing hero. Don't give up on your dreams, no matter what. Dabi. The paper was soft with wrinkles from how many times it had been read. More than once Hitoshi had fallen asleep with the paper against his hand. His dad still swung by the area and sometimes left snacks in the treehouse, things that would last a while. In an effort to keep the missing boy healthy, he wouldn't let Hitoshi join him, though. No matter how much the child pleaded, Shota remained firm that until he had made contact with Dabi personally, the boy wouldn't go into that area. The neighborhood was steadily growing more dangerous, and the uptick in villainous behavior was something that the man was determined to keep his son away from. Hitoshi would complain about these things to Izuku, especially when they had sleepovers at the boys' house. Under the watchful eye of All Might posters, the two would admit to the dark thoughts that plagued them. They were disgruntled at their inability to locate Dabi or Hitoshi's mysterious other soul sibling. They talked about what they thought their romantic soulmates would be like based on their marks. The boys were having one such sleepover when life turned upside down. Dinner had passed, and the boys were watching the newest All Might movie while discussing their future hero costumes. They had a bunch of papers strewn around them with colored pencils scattered on the floor. Hitoshi was content to listen to his friend chatter while they drew, only occasionally giving his input. They didn't register the ringing phone or Inko responding to it. It wasn't until the woman began to softly cry and turned off the movie that the two sat ramrod straight, looking at her with concern. Mama, what's wrong? The woman fell to her knees and pulled both boys into a tight hug. Mama? Izuku's voice trembled. She sat back on her knees, wiping her eyes, and took a deep breath. Hitoshi? Honey, you're going to have to stay with us for a few days. What's going on? Izuku asked for his friend, who had gone mute in fear. What's wrong? Hitoshi's parents were part of a large operation tonight. Shota-san broke his leg, and they are keeping him in the hospital overnight until they can have someone with a healing quirk take care of it. She gulped. And Papa? Izuku's entire body softened at the boy's tiny voice. She often looked at the two and saw how fast they were growing. But now she just saw the scrawny kid she had first met several years ago, with baby fat clinging to his cheeks. Hasashi-san, he was hurt pretty badly. He'll be okay, but he will need to stay in the hospital for several days. She wiped away the tears that were forming in the boy's eyes. Hitoshi, sweetie, both of them will be okay. It was a scary night, and you'll need to stay here for a while so they can heal. I want to see them. Hitoshi, his bottom lip quivered. Please, I need to see them. She glanced at Izuku and back at Hitoshi. She smoothed down his hair and gave him a kiss on the forehead. In the morning, I'll call and ask if we can visit. The boy nodded and wrapped himself in the oversized blanket that the boys had left on the couch. He was barely visible under the fabric. He wished he could disappear altogether. First, Mama, then Tubby. I can't lose my dads too. I can't. A nearly inaudible whine escaped his throat. It didn't matter what the Midoriyas did. Hitoshi was closed off from the world from that moment until he fell asleep over an hour later. Inko had lifted the boy, blanket and all, and carried him to the futon laid out in Izuku's room. When she had turned to leave, her baby boy gripped her hand tightly. Please stay. She planted a kiss on his curls and promised to be right back. She changed into pajamas and joined the two boys on the floor, holding her son to her bosom as if she could protect him from the dangers of the world. Hitoshi's foot tapped to the beat of the music floating out of the kitchen, intent on completing the day's assignments. His hand smudged the graphite across his scrap paper. It was always easier for him to work his thoughts out that way, much like his best friend. So regardless of his online classes, he kept notebooks dedicated to each subject. The soft lidding notes paused in the air before a delicate laugh filled the momentary silence. Hitoshi closed his notebook with his completed work and stretched before joining his mother in the kitchen. Mom, you should sing with Papa sometime. You two both have such nice voices. The boy hopped onto the counter to watch her finish putting cookies into the oven. His mother was finally well rested. She hadn't had to work multiple jobs, and now the light falling across her face showed a healthy color. Don't worry, my sweet boy. When your papa joins me, we'll sing all the time. In the time it took for her to speak, shadows were cast through the window, catching on the tattered curtains. The alarm went off, and the kitchen smelled of cookies and whatever had charred onto the bottom of an ancient oven. He could hear their neighbors through the shabby walls. Just be sure to take care of your dad, okay? Mom, what are you talking about? It was like she didn't hear him. Of course, you guys have Miss Inko and Izuku too. You're such sweet people. Mama, you and Papa aren't going anywhere. Hitoshi's voice rose higher in urgency. He couldn't lose her again, and definitely not Papa. You'll be fine, my baby boy. Hitoshi shot up in tears. It had been a while since he'd dreamt about his mother like that. He watched Inko carefully settle Izuku aside. The mother pulled him into her arms and let him sob. I can't lose him like I lost Mama. Oh, baby, you won't. Your papa is strong, and the doctors are talented. She ran her fingers through his wild hair. Let me call your dad, okay? See when you can visit. He nodded and froze when she stood. Come on with me, dear. She helped him stand and wrapped her arms around him. He clung to her like Izuku did as a small child. She actually pulled him into her lap when she settled down to call Shota. He tuned her out, his dream at the forefront of his mind, unaware that he was picking at the skin around his nails. Not long after the call, where they were told they could visit in about an hour, Hitoshi woke Izuku. The two got dressed while Inko made them breakfast. Despite this, Hitoshi couldn't eat. Food only made him think of baking with his mother, something he also did with his papa, who was in the hospital and injured. He forced himself to eat a few bites when Izuku gave him worried looks, but he may as well have been eating sawdust. It seemed like forever, but the trio was on the train to the hospital. He gripped the soft material of Izuku's sleeve, rubbing it between his thumb and forefinger. The announcer called out their stop, and Inko wrapped an arm around the boys' shoulders and guided them down the sidewalk to the looming building. Hitoshi froze on the sidewalk. It was like his feet had a mind of their own and wouldn't listen to what he wanted. He might have stayed there for a minute or 10. He wouldn't know. However, his trance was broken when he saw his dark-haired father limp out of the front doors on crutches. He didn't process moving any more than he did stopping. He just clung to his dad's capture scarf and sobbed, letting the familiar smell and texture soothe him. He babbled about his dream, and despite his injury, his father crouched down and wrapped him in a hug. Everything is okay, Hitoshi. Everything is okay. Shota smiled over the boy's head, gratefully nodding at Inko. Let's go see your papa, okay? Shota lifted the boy onto his hip, suppressing a grunt while at it. Inko and Shota spoke briefly before Shota helped them through the security that was provided outside the hero wing of the hospital. Inko offered to have Izuku and herself grab the family some drinks and guided the kid down the hall so that the family could reunite in peace. Her son was trying to break the tension with his chatter. Shota pushed the door open, where his husband's blonde hair was splayed out on the pillow while he slept, hooked up to several machines and covered in bandages. Hitoshi started crying all over again. I know it's scary, buddy. There are a lot of wires and bandages, but it just means that the doctors are healing him, and he's sleeping because it takes a lot of energy to heal. I don't want him to leave me like Mama did. Shota just pulled the boy to his chest, murmuring soft words of reassurance. His little kitten had been through so much. Eventually, though, the boy fell into a restless sleep. Shota settled into a comfortable chair beside his husband's bed. His leg was starting to throb, but he ignored it in favor of taking care of his boys. When Izuku and Inko returned, he accepted the coffee gratefully. The green-haired child drug a chair across the room, making the adults wince with the screeching it made against the flooring. The kid pushed it in front of Aizawa for him to set his leg on, and then Izuku sat at the end of Hazashi's bed, worrying his lip. It scared him to see his hero so vulnerable. Present Mike was always so energetic, and it just felt wrong for him to be so still. It took a few days before Hasashi was permitted to go home. He was off patrol for the rest of the month, and since he was able to be off from work, he spent the time spoiling his son, especially after he heard about Hitoshi's nightmare. He also spent it talking to Nezu about the possibility of becoming a teacher. He had considered it for a while. Namuri had gone back to school for her certification and was always talking about her classes. Hasashi loved working with people. He loved sharing the knowledge he gained. It was one of his favorite segments on his show, and he loved the idea of a steady job, one that could last beyond his hero career and that would help him support his family. Nezu was looking for a new English teacher. The last one they had was an active pro, and he had unfortunately been severely injured in duty and was still in the hospital nearly a month later with no changes. Recovery Girl hadn't been able to help after his recent injury, and seeing his soul marks, soul children that he still hadn't met, Hasashi began to think that it would be in his best interest to cut back a little from the physical side of his job. Shota had promised to support him regardless of his decision. He understood, to an extent, Hasashi's reasoning. This recent mission had terrified him too. Neither man wanted to leave their children, especially not before they had found them. They didn't want to take the security of family away from their baby boy, even if he was quickly growing into a young adult. There was another open position, that of a heroics teacher, and Namuri was pushing Shota to apply. She touted the benefits of the couple working together: increased time together, consistent schedules, extra resources for their family. Hasashi put away the latest batch of cookies and glanced at the clock. It was nearing 4 in the morning. He would admit to being a stress baker, and neither of his family members complained about his sweets. Hitoshi had fallen asleep a couple hours prior, and now he was waiting for his husband to return home. The blonde straightened up the kitchen, smiling when the door cracked open and shut with the thud of boots. Shota entered the kitchen and kissed his neck, holding the man close. "Smells delicious." The scruff of his face rubbed against the other's throat. Hasashi laughed. "Unlike you, handsome." "Shower." "Sure."
He agreed easily, gripping the man's hand and following him to the back of the house. Hazashi carefully took the time to run his fingers through Shota's wet hair. He told him about his conversation with Nezu from earlier, that the Chimera had said he could begin teaching without his certification and take classes while he taught.
Sounds like a plan.
He wants you to teach. The man groaned.
Yeah, Nim has been bugging me about it.
What are you thinking?
I like the idea of changing how students are taught to think about the career. But Zashi, who on earth would want me as a teacher?
I don't know. I wouldn't have minded having a sexy underground hero teacher while I was at UA. The dark-haired man gave him a little shove and an eye roll, even as he grabbed a washcloth to scrub at his husband's chest.
Seriously though, babe, I don't think I'd be good at it.
Nezu is offering me a position to shadow a teacher. Maybe you should as well. See if you like it.
Zashi,
It's only an idea. You know that I will always support you, no matter what you decide. Shota hummed. Despite being clean, the couple made no move to leave the warm water. I'm kinda excited.
well, you've always been a nerd.
Rude! Besides, you were always in the top 5 in class.
But not first.
Shota smirked at the look on his husband's face and leaned in to kiss him.
What would Hitoshi do during the day?
Nezu said he could work in the teacher's break room. There would always be someone to keep an eye on him, help him if he needs.
Better than keeping him as a personal student, says his personal student. Exactly. Hitoshi needs to be at least 16 before he gets that close to the rat.
They took turns drying each other off, combing through their long hair. They were silent while blow-drying their locks, but occasionally made eye contact in the mirror and would have a silent conversation with soft eyes. After reapplying Hazashi's bandages, they climbed into their bed, letting the heavy blankets cover them.
I want to teach them self-defense.
Who?
Hitoshi and Izuku.
I don't disagree with that, but why?
Izuku was nearly kidnapped a couple months ago. He's being bullied and Hitoshi doesn't know the extent. They both want to go to UA and neither have the physical advantage to get in. They're almost in middle school.
Do you think Inko would be okay with this?
If we're the ones doing it, yes. I suspect she's wanted Izuku to have some skills, but there aren't places that would accept him.
Then let's do it.
Let's get our boys capable.
They snuggled in together, letting the steady beats of their hearts, a sign that they're alive, soothe them to sleep. Izuku held back tears as he looked at the desk. The desk being covered in slurs was nothing new. The spider lilies sitting on it and the article beside it were
10 quirkless dead in Tokyo.
He tried to resist reading through the article, but it was like a magnet pulling his eyes to each word, lingering on the horrible things said about people like him. The laughter of his peers was buzzing like a shaken beehive, full of creatures ready to sting at a moment's notice. Numbly, he cleaned his desk, He ignored the teacher's scolding for his vandalism and took out a notebook and pencil. In minutes, he was at lunch, eating alone in a closet. He was listening to his teacher explain a grammar topic, and then he was running from the bullies at the final bell. A moment later, and he was home. The entire day was gone, just like that. He started to prep for dinner, aware that his mother had a late night that night. He wanted things to be easier for her on nights like this, to be a good, useful son. He didn't get online that night. He didn't watch the news. He waited for his mother to come home and ask her about her day. He smiled and cleaned up after dinner. He went to bed and read a comic. He pretended the world outside of their small apartment wasn't there at all. His dreams that night constantly shifted. Hitoshi saw the headlines about the group of quirkless suicide while watching the news with his dad's. He rushed to the computer, logging on to his Hero Zone account. Izuku hadn't been on all day that day. Dad, Papa! The two men came into the room and hugged their distressed son. He's okay, baby. I just texted Inko and he's been helping out at home just like normal. Does he know? They shared a quick glance. I don't know, sweetheart. Inko didn't say. We'll check on him tomorrow if he doesn't message you, okay? He nodded. Why don't you leave that open so we can hear if he messages you, alright? He nodded again. He didn't want to lose his best friend. Why don't we also get you an appointment with a therapist? This must have been scary, especially with everything you've been through. He just nodded again. His voice was gone, like his mother, like Dobby, like all those quirkless kids in Tokyo. Hitoshi kept waiting for Izuku to say something about what happened, but Izuku went about his life as usual. The two talked about hero fights, their advances in gymnastics, and their classwork. Everything seemed normal, and after 2 weeks, Hitoshi let himself relax. Izuku was fine. Izuku was not fine. His only consolation at school was that Kachan didn't participate in the suicide baiting and discussion. He continued to bully him, use his quirk on him, harass him, but he never made a comment about death. Still, it was wearing on him. Every day he was being told he deserved to die. He needed to die because he was born differently. He found himself hiding on a rooftop after school, curled in a ball and crying. Why did everyone hate him? The sun moved across the sky, peeking from the clouds before hiding again. The sky shouldn't have been so bright for such an awful day. He didn't realize he was moving until his legs were swinging over the edge of the building, tears dripping down his face. He faintly recognized a presence sit next to him, a waft of coffee and sweat. He let himself go. He fell against the body next to him and sobbed out the entire story. The physical and emotional abuse, the suicide baiting. Calloused fingers brushed themselves in his hair, and a gruff voice muttered platitudes. He let Eraserhead soothe him. He let his tears rack his body, dehydrate him. It feels like I'm hollow. Nothing is real.
Izuku, are you in therapy?
He shook his head and scoffed. No one will take me. Shota cursed out their society and pulled the boy closer. It was then he saw the animals, the Viridian bunny and sleek panther, curling around one another, and his eyes widened. Why do they all hate me?
People fear what they don't understand,
Shota murmured to his soul son.
It's been a problem for a long time. It's why they discriminated against me, against Hitoshi, against you. It's why things are difficult. It's why there are so many villains.
I hate it.
I know it's awful, but that's why when we find our people, we hold on to them.
He guided Izuku's attention to the creatures gracing their skin, gently tracing their shapes.
I'm going to teach you self-defense, okay? You and Hitoshi will cover Aikido and we'll teach you how to take care of yourselves. And you will be heroes that can change the system that has hurt you all.
They sat there, letting the beautiful sunset colors wash over them. Izuku clung to his soul parent, the man who knew about his quirklessness, his weakness, and chose to care for him anyway. Thank you.
You don't need to thank me for telling you the truth.
You believe in me? Izuku, still disbelieving. You said I could be a hero.
You can.
Even my mom doesn't think that. He looked down at his lap, his patched school uniform. And she's the only one who has cared so long.
You have more potential than so many of the would-be heroes studying at high school because they have a strong quirk, but no sense of what is right.
You'd set them straight. Shota thought about that. Thought about the offer given to his husband and himself. You're a better hero than most of the ones on the charts. Izuku shyly glanced up at the man holding him. He paused. You've always been one of my favorites. You gave me hope. A scruffy kiss was placed on his curls. Izuku melted and let out a small yawn.
Let's get you home.
The man pulled him into his arms, gathered the boy's belongings, and swung him down from the building in a move that mimicked the day that he saved Izuku from kidnappers. Izuku let himself drift off. As long as Eraserhead was there, he would be fine. When the two arrived at the Midoriya home, Shota gestured at Inko to be quiet and personally tucked Izuku into bed. He hadn't been in the boys' room before and took in the many posters and figurines. He was surprised to see his own hero persona against the plethora of merchandise. He quickly shut the door and sat down in the living room, lifting a mug of tea that Inko had made for him. What's going on? He sighed.
Several things. Do you know Izuku's being bullied?
The woman frowned. I suspected, but the school never says anything, and Izuku is very good at hiding things from me that he thinks will worry me. She fiddled with the edge of her apron. I wish I could tell more or do more for him, but I also don't think it would be different at any other school.
His classmates have been particularly cruel since the incident in Tokyo.
They've been harassing him, and the teachers aren't doing anything about it.
It was times like this that Shota wished he had his husband's tactful communication skills. I'll talk to Mitsuki, see if Katsuki knows anything.
I was thinking about teaching him and Hitoshi Aikido. It's a non-offensive martial art and may help the two protect themselves.
I worry that if the teachers are doing nothing now, they would blame him for if he did defend himself. Inko's voice wavered.
I suspect so. Hitoshi is enrolled in online school because of discrimination. I would be glad to help you get Izuku enrolled.
I will look into that. It would be nice to see him happier. Plus, he is a very smart kid. I don't think they're letting him show that at that school of his.
I've noticed how intelligent he is.
He paused and rolled up his sleeve.
I also discovered tonight that he's my soul child.
Inko's eyes widened over the appearance of her son's soul animal.
Hazashi doesn't have Izuku's mark, but we share others.
Inko traced her son's animal on her own arm. Hasashi and Izuku were never bonded. It was a source of content for us. I wouldn't be surprised if Izuku has latched onto you as a father figure. The closest he has had is Matsuru, and the two aren't super close. She gave him a soft smile. If it had to be anyone, I am glad it's you. You and your husband are good people, and Izuku needs all the support he can get.
Thank you.
He nodded gently at her, not realizing until he had it that he got her approval. Maybe we should start inviting you to family dinners. She teased him a little. It wouldn't be any different from inviting them to dinner any other time.
Maybe we should.
The two chatted for a little while before Shota excused himself to go home. He had a lot to share with his husband. The months leading up to their 12th birthdays were some of the most fulfilling of the boys' lives. They spent several evenings a week together between gymnastics, aikido, and family dinners. Izuku was set to transfer schools after the summer break. When they broke the news to the Bakugos, Katsuki didn't know how to respond. So he did what he usually did and let sparks fly from his palms. Stupid Deku! Why does he think he's so special that he doesn't need to come to our school anymore? It's that stupid purple kid's fault, I bet. The boys stormed off from the group lunch. Matsuru just shook his head. For their 12th birthday, each boy was gifted a cell phone. They wasted no time in adding one another to their contact list. The trio of parents were already in there. The adults sat them down to discuss the responsibilities and expectations that came with having the phones. Neither kid minded much. The excitement over being able to talk anytime, no hero zone needed, was too immense. Izuku immediately added an animal icon for each of his soulmate's contacts. He was frustrated when he couldn't find one that matched just right, but accepted the one that was closest. He wasted no time in adding an All Might background either. His aunt got him an All Might charm for it as well. The boy beamed at how cool his phone was. He would cradle it to his chest when no one was looking. It was the first big step towards being a teenager. That's the end of Chapter 4, Part 2 of Soulful Menagerie by chocolatecastleinthesky on AO3. If you like this, please go support the original author, link in the description below. Hope you have a good day, night, or whatever time zone you're in. Bye kittens, and bye heroes.